CEWT Talk is a weekly 20-minute podcast brought to you by the Continuing Education Workforce Training Division of Idaho State University's College of Technology. This podcast is part of our continuing outreach efforts, and the format is conversation. We're having conversations with businesses, professionals, entrepreneurs, community agencies, and in all cases, difference makers. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud. So subscribe today. Take 20 minutes and hear from people living in your community who are making a difference in your community. It's time to get started with CEWT Talk. Hello, everyone. This is Jason Batalden, the Assistant Director here at Continuing Education Workforce Training. And we want to welcome you to CEWT Talk, our podcast. And Paul.
Oh, yes. Hi, Jason. How are you today?
Good. We haven't recorded an episode in a minute, have we?
No. I mean, the audience, they get episodes weekly, but they don't understand the lag between recording sometimes. And I think it's been like, 3 weeks since we recorded something?
It has been a minute. In fact, it's so much so that you and I both were commenting we might be a little rusty on this thing. So
just a little rusty. What are we supposed to be doing here today?
Yeah, right. What are we doing? You know, what's funny again about this podcast, and by the way, can we put a little plug in, Paul?
Oh, yes. It's we're working on that right now, aren't we?
Yeah, Paul and I got this really cool episode series coming up. I think it was going to be a 4-part series. I think we decided
4 or 5. I think we're going to follow how long it takes us to go down that road.
Right. But just the title of the series alone is worth announcing. Whether or not the podcast episodes are worth listening to, the title is so cool that you at least got to check it out. So it's a podcast about
podcasting by podcasters.
That's right. So Paul and I are going to actually have a series that talks about our experience in creating CEWT Talk in hopes of maybe giving somebody some encouragement and some inspiration, as well as maybe a tip or two about trying to figure out how to do this.
Yeah, because we started this, we didn't know really a lot about doing it, and we've had to evolve and change over time. And I think some people might gain from that experience.
Yeah, we hope so. So keep your eye out for that. Check it out and give us some feedback on it too. But that's not why we're here today. I'm going to just kind of talk up our guests for a minute. I've been wanting to get our guest on the show today. Since the first time him and I met well over a year ago. He's a really neat guy to start with, number one, and number two, he's got some great stories, and and we want to be able to share that. And I think he's got some great insight. And so I've been really, really looking forward to that. So with that being said, we have to say the magic word, Paul.
The magic word. What? The magic word.
Well, I guess it's the start word.
Yeah.
And it's welcome.
Welcome.
And with that, we know we've started. And so, Darren, welcome to the show. And please introduce yourself to our audience.
My name's Darren Jernigan. It's an absolute pleasure to be here and finally get hooked up with Jason and Paul. And I've been a longtime faculty member at Idaho State University, spanning 20 years. I was a faculty member in the physical therapist assistant program for about 5 years, and then became the director of the program for about 15. Somewhere in there, I was also I rose up to be a middle manager of several programs in health occupations. And so currently, I'm the interim associate dean for the College of Technology.
Lots of hats there, Darren.
Yeah.
Well, and just a neat little path, right, Darren? I mean, you've gone from just as an instructor, professor, have touched many different levels of the program, and now sitting in the interim dean chair, and that has been a relatively new position for you. How can I ask, how's it going? I mean, drinking from a fire hose is an understatement, or?
I think that was a term that I used with you. Total baptism by fire.
Right on.
Talk about just, not making it in the boat. you ended up in the current. That's the way that it's kind of been. I will tell you though, after 20 years of being a faculty member and seeing a certain side of things and being in the classroom, and it was this really kind of perfect timing for me to get a chance to learn something new, see things from a different vantage point. I know we're going to get to this, but I was a National Park Service ranger for 20 years in Grand Teton National Park as a Jenny Lake climbing ranger. And one of the beautiful things about being a faculty member was I could go 9 months through the year, pack my bags at the end of 9 months, and spend a summer in Grand Teton National Park, and then come back and do it again. And so I retired from that, and this has been a really cool evolution for me to be on a 12 as the first. In fact, this is a fact. This is the first time that I will have worked at the same job for 12 months out of the year since 1996.
That is an interesting career milestone, right? Thinking 20 years, and it's the first time that you're working 12 months at the same position technically. Can I ask, and this probably is my own personal bias, or at least secret wishes, but when you were making that decision to retire from the National Park Service as a ranger and to continue on, in your career at ISU, was it a little bit of conflict? I mean, to know that you were kind of saying, in my brain, and I've seen some of the pictures you sent us, my brain is that's got to be the greatest experiential job anyone can have. And so I'm wondering if at all there was a little bit of twinge like, oh, do I really want to give up these experiences every summer?
It was a very difficult decision. I know I look extremely young for my age. But I must say, just the physicality of being a Jenny Lake Ranger, I mean, there's only one way to go in the Tetons, and that is up. And it's like, straight up, and then it's straight down. And through the years, that stuff takes its toll. And there are many weeks where you put on 50, 60, 70 miles of walking and hiking and climbing in the range, depending on the kind of week you had, the number of rescues and stuff like that. So I retired from that, from my Jenny Lake Ranger position. This will be going on 4 years, but I was 53 when I retired. And I must admit, I was still able at that time to really stay quite fit, and which you had to be, right. And on top of your skills. I had to be able to, right out of the gate, be able to ice climb, rock climb, this certain style of climbing called aid climbing. I just had to be ready to do anything at any time once I got to the Tetons. And so that takes a lot of, there's just keeping that level all the time. Sure. There's a certain anxiety about it because when you get there, man, you've got to be ready.
Right.
So for clarification, Darren, what were your duties as a ranger?
Well, I mean, that's a great question because back, when I first found out about, the climbing rangers actually exist. And as an avid climber, I'm like, where did that come from? I mean, to climb. Are you kidding me? What's wrong with this? That's
right.
So once I found that out, I was like, I've got to figure out how to check the boxes to become one. And literally it's a Jenny Lake climbing ranger does like 1 day a week in the station where we give out permits and information and beta about climbs and, trekking or backpacking trips and stuff like that, educating the masses about the park and such. And then you spend a couple of days on mountain patrols. And a mountain patrol is kind of like, it's whatever you want it to be. What do you want to do today? And someone's usually made it up with you on the schedule. So you have a partner and you go anywhere in the range you want to go. And you get a couple of those a week. And then you get a couple of canyon patrols where you're just out, trekking through the canyons.
Right.
So I was like, sign me up. That's what I'm all about that. So it's a really interesting, cool job, but you could start to see it could be very physical too,
Whatever gave you that impression. So we're talking about that classic vertical climbing. Is that what you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So basically the gear with the nylon ropes, you have to sometimes spike the climbs with the
Tetons.
Yeah, the Tetons. Yeah. So
ice climbing with ice tools.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So that's really, I mean, that seems incredibly physically exerting for almost anyone.
Sure.
I mean, obviously, Jason and I are in tip-top shape for that. But
Right. Hey, a little weird confession here. When I was in college, one of my college friends, and believe it or not, I went to school in Oklahoma of all places, but he was an avid climber and an avid ice climber, and had spent a few years in Alaska doing all those things. But then he came down to school in Oklahoma. And so I kind of chummed around with him, and we would go do lots of climbings. Our problem was it was hard to find climbs tall enough to usually, to put in protection and all that type of stuff. But
Cool.
it was a fascinating experience. And Paul, I'll just say this much, and Darren will probably probably appreciates this even more so, but I'll never forget where you kind of stood at the base of, in our case, it was cliffs. Maybe we'd get, most of them were just, single rope, there was no double that. Yeah. Right. But you'd look at this, stand at the bottom of this face, and you'd look up and you'd be like, I'm literally going to crawl up this thing. And then you'd get to the top and you're like, I just literally crawled up that thing. And that was a weird sense of accomplishment and a weird sense of, an obstacle, right? It was like, so it was from a psychological point of view, it was probably one of the more rewarding activities I've ever done. Bar none, all the team sports I played and all those different activities. It just was personally a more rewarding type of activity. So I'm sure, I don't mean to get too far down that road, but
no,
yeah.
Probably one reason that you and I kind of connect is because of that kind of experience. I love that kind of problem solving, and that's really what it is. It's just a big problem, and I can't tell you, that you eventually I was addicted to climbing, no doubt about it. I still am. But think about like standing underneath El Capitan,
Right. And knowing you're going to spend the night on there.
Multiple nights.
Yeah, right.
But it's, it's kind of in the unknown is just, there's something about it that is so intriguing to me.
Yeah.
And
well,
describing.
I guess here's that segue, right? So there's that kind of, like, you hit the word problem solving, right? And that was a lesson I learned. My buddy would laugh at me. He says, dude, you can't muscle your way up. I was doing push-ups and pull-ups to get in shape. And he's like, you got to do that. But if that's how you're going to get up the wall, you're going to get up 30 feet and you're going to be done. You're going to be done. That's it. So it was really mind technical. So now transition this into your current position. How much of that is kind of the same mentality, right? Is to problem solve and to find solutions.
I'm so glad that you mentioned this. As a ranger, especially, I through time being on the team of rangers that I was on, you become what's called a search and rescue coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, you've demonstrated enough skill, foresight, and hindsight to actually, for us, it was carry a radio around, although this isn't the radio, but it took all the calls for emergencies in the range. And you want to talk about, that's a fair amount of responsibility.
Yes.
From the tip of the Grand to the valley floor, all along the length of the range. And it's interesting because I think it has really prepped me to really be present in the moment and take in all the information that I can get and make very distinct decisions to an end point. And so, but, also being a rescuer on scene, it's the same thing. It's just on a smaller scale. And I think, honestly, I really feel like the skills that were developed for me in those really pressure cooking moments really allow me to traverse the kind of issues and terrain that I'm faced with as an administrator in academia. I used to be a corporate executive type before I was an educator, so I'm used to that kind of decision making. But I really think that climbing stuff and being a SAR coordinator has really kind of prepped me for being in the position I'm in. And I'm really thankful. I want to shout out to Debbie Ronneberg, because she asked me, would you consider helping me and being the interim associate dean as I'm the dean? And so I big kudos to her for letting me taking the chance on me for one.
Right. Boy, we may go way off the rails here, but a couple things you said. First of all, being in the present, being present. And I just think in today's life, being present in the moment is a hard thing to do. But here's this other component that I was just contemplating myself here recently was, when you reach whatever certain age that you get to, and like Darren, you shared kind of your age earlier, and I'm in that neighborhood, maybe a couple houses down, but we're in the same block. My thought, is, okay, isn't that weird how life, a lot of my decisions, I always look back and think they weren't really conscious decisions to go from point A to point B or job C or job D, but yet how those kind of all connect together to prepare you for where you currently are at. And I was thinking about that just this morning, actually. I was just contemplating that and going, that's a fascinating experience in life that I would say all of us have an opportunity to experience, to do, yes, if we think about it.
I wholeheartedly agree. Can I step away? I want to show you something, because I want to tie this to this. This just brings it together, Jason. In 1996, I graduated from Idaho State in 1988 and went off and got a master's degree after that and became a physical therapist. And during that time, though, at Idaho State, I was introduced to climbing. And so I was already starting to become this kind of insatiable thing for me. But this is just a shout out to Idaho State University as a whole, but virtually all the really deep, meaningful relationships in my life revolve around the relationships that I made in the span of time when I came to Idaho State as an athlete and ran track. Mm-hmm. And this,
oh my goodness,
this is a 4x400 meter relay team that I was a part of. This is me when I had hair.
I love it.
And anyways, exceptional people. This young man here on the end, his name is Dave Cook. This is George McKinley and Jason Bennerman. Number 2 all-time 400 meters. Number 1 all-time 500 meters. Big Sky champion 110 high hurdles. I mean, these guys were exceptional. Yeah. I was the slowest guy in that bunch and just happy to be along for the ride. But what I want to point out to you is in 1996, Dave Cook, we lived in Boise at the same time, and I convinced him. I had just bought a pop-top Vanagon.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And I said, and I had been doing really well. I mean, I'd kind of gone up the corporate ladder. Had money in the bank. I'm like, Dave, sell your car. Let's take off for the summer. I'll pay for everything. Now, he's like my bro, right? We trained together. We became very, very close through those years, and he sold his car, and we went on the summer of love, you know.
Right on. That's great.
And we climbed all over the Northwest. We went to another ISU alumni's wedding in Montana. I mean, it was just, you know, stayed with other ISU alumni along the way. I mean, multiple spots, and climbed and carried on as young dudes would do.
Right.
It kind of it's just that one decision after another, you know. And in fact, the skills that we started to really hone in that period of time, being really intense about it, allowed me to have the resume to become a Jenny Lake climbing ranger. Mm-hmm. Because you had to have your things together, right?
Wow.
You had to have a resume. And so, yeah, anyway,
that is cool.
It's so cool that you said that, because it just fits a story that winds back into Idaho State.
Yeah, no, that is cool. That thank you for sharing that. Vanagon, number one, the Vanagon, just again, like awesome. And that type of thing. You know, what a great experience. And again, talk about experiences that molded and shaped you and put you on a path to where you are today. And I, you know, I guess what I want to be careful to say, like, I don't want to pigeonhole and say like, this is the pinnacle, because I don't think that's ever fair statement to say about anyone's life, that we've reached the point where we can't go beyond. But I'm just saying how things are so interconnected. Like, you know, what you're doing today is possible because of decisions you made in 1996, right? 1996, you made these decisions. Yeah.
Also, I mean, did any of us ever think we'd ever wind up on the path, you know, at the point in this path? I mean, when I was, you know, very, very small, minute analogy, you know, I never would expect that I'd be outside in my front yard every morning asking a little tiny dog to go poo.
Yeah.
when I was 20 years old.
Right. Having that responsibility, right?
Yeah, it is, you know, you don't know who you are at 20, 30. In fact, I don't think you really know who you are until you get to our age. And then you look in the mirror and you go, I know exactly who I am.
Yeah.
Other than that, until then, I think you know who you are, but these life questions come up, and you have to ask yourself those questions at pivotal moments. That, you know, there's the fork. Which way am I? Who am I to make this decision to go one way or the other? And you know, until you reach our age and you go, I know who I am. Oh, don't even tell me.
You know, that's so true. And I would even take it a step farther, but I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, when I crested into my 50s, I really felt like I'm really starting to feel far more comfortable in my own skin. But, you know, I don't think you know yourself until you are knocking on the door.
Yeah. No, I'm with you.
I can look back about over the full, what's the body of work that you've experienced, you know, then I think, man, you know everything about who you are at that moment, you know?
No, I'm with you on that 100%. I was joking with someone, and even this sounds arrogant to say even now, but I said at my age now in my 50s, I'm looking back going, I don't really know everything, but I have a better idea of what I don't know. Right. What I don't know, I really don't know. And back when I was 20, you didn't even have that concept of what you didn't know. You know, just the idea of not knowing something was kind of foreign. Now, we got to make a hard segue here. And unfortunately, that was the timer, but we're going to extend this a little bit. So part of how you and I met, besides our roles here at ISU, but where we specifically came in to know each other was through some work on the emergency medicine conference. Last year, the event was all put together, and then thanks to it, just like everything else in the world, COVID decided to say, no, we got different plans. But this year, we were putting on our emergency medicine conference. It'll be actually April 30th and May 1st. So that's this coming week. Darren, that's an important event for you. I know maybe not quite involved in it in your current role that maybe you have been in your past, but it's still a very important event for you.
Well, it is. I mean, EMS services in the state of Idaho are often fielded by folks that are volunteers. And so an EMS conference like the one that's hosted here at Idaho State is an integral part of people's training and maintaining their certification. Mine as well. And this year, I'm upset with myself because I just wasn't sure I would have the bandwidth to be a presenter and be super integrated in the event this year because of my new role. I should have just done it, but I'm going to participate,
right.
And I have in the past as a presenter, and I do, certainly plan to be part of the process in the future. It's a passion of mine. I think EMS is it's such an important bedrock of pre-hospital care for especially rural places like Idaho.
Right. And so much of your career too spent on that emergency medicine responding and how important it is to be up on new techniques and the latest technology so that you can provide the right care immediately when it's needed. So that's the other side of this as well.
Quick question. Did you have to know some emergency medicines treatments while you were a ranger?
I did. I had to become a wilderness EMT. I was already a physical therapist, and that really checked some boxes for me. But I needed to, and I had first aid, but I needed to go back to be able to at least ride in the ambulance for one. But I also took a wilderness module too, and you do a lot of on-the-job training as a ranger as well. So, yeah, I'm going back actually in about 2 weeks to be a presenter at the EMS refresher for Grand Teton and Yellowstone National Parks, County, and get my training hours there.
Right.
Excellent.
Very good. Well, our timer went off, and I just feel like we, for some reason, just started a really great conversation.
I'd love to have you back, Darren, because we didn't even get into any ranger stories.
I have a list. I literally had a list. Like I wanted to take you through. Like I was going to describe a first day. A first day of a season, and then I was going to describe a last day, and then I was going to do a couple of days in between, and just paint this picture of wow.
We got to have Darren back.
Darren, can we come back? Okay.
Yeah.
Because first of all, I just want to say I really appreciated the conversation we had. How in the world we got down that road, I don't know, where we're evaluating the lessons of life, but holy Hannah, that was a great conversation. So I'm really appreciating that. So with that being said, Paul, we do got to wrap this up. And so if you are interested in the Emergency Medicine Conference, and there are continuing education units or hours available, so we definitely want to make sure that if you're in that field and you need the hours, there's no better way to get it than go to this conference. It's $20 is a participant fee, so it's very, very cost effective for what you get for those hours. And you want to reach out to cetrain.isu.edu/EMC. So it's cetrain.isu.edu/EMC, or you can call us at 208-282-3372.
That was perfect, Jason.
I know. Apparently what I needed to do to remember the phone number is not say it for 3 weeks. That's what I needed to do. It's just not try to remember it for 3 weeks, and it came right back to me. So, Darren, I can't tell you how much we appreciate you having the show, and we can't tell you just how glad we are for your current position and the opportunity and the benefit the College of Technology has from your experience and your commitment and leadership. So we're looking forward to that and hope that pretty soon here the fire hose dials down to maybe a water bottle, and maybe the fire of the baptism isn't so hot anymore. So
thank you so much.
No, thank you. Really, it was great. And I really would like to have you come back on, because I want to hear the Ranger stories.
I do too. So
and they get grander every year, but they're still, they were unbelievable when I started the stories. That's what my wife tells me.
Yep. That's great. All right. Thanks, Darren.
Thank you, Darren.
Cheers.